According to the CDC, more than 1 in 7 American adults, somewhere around 35 to 37 million people, are living with chronic kidney disease right now, and researchers estimate that roughly 9 out of 10 of them don't even know it yet. That's not a scare tactic, that's just how quietly this organ suffers. Your kidneys don't have a lot of pain receptors, so damage can build up for years without a single obvious symptom, which is exactly why prevention matters so much more here than it does with, say, a sore knee. You've probably also seen the phrase kidney detox foods all over the internet. Let's clear that up right away. No food actually detoxes your kidneys because your kidneys are already the best detox system your body owns. Each one is packed with about 1 million tiny filtering units called nephrons, and together, your 2 kidneys filter somewhere between 150 and 180 liters of blood every single day, according to the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases. On top of filtering waste, they also help control your blood pressure through a hormone system called renin. They trigger your bone marrow to make red blood cells through a hormone called erythropoietin, and they activate vitamin D so your body can actually use the calcium you eat. So when people say a food detoxes the kidneys, that's not quite right. What certain foods can actually do is reduce the workload on your kidneys and support the systems that keep them functioning well into your 70s, 80s, and beyond. And that distinction matters because once kidney function drops significantly, researchers have found it's extremely difficult to reverse, which is exactly why catching problems early through simple food choices and routine testing beats trying to fix things after the fact. So today, we're covering 5 foods worth adding to your routine, especially if you're over 40 or if you're already managing blood pressure or blood sugar issues, since both of those conditions place extra strain on kidney function over time. Let's start with the first one, bottle gourd. You might know it by other names, calabash squash, opo squash, or long squash, and you can usually find it at Asian or Indian grocery stores. If it's not available near you, zucchini and yellow summer squash are reasonable low-potassium stand-ins with a similar texture. Bottle gourd is about 96% water, which makes it a natural, mild diuretic, meaning it gently increases urine output and helps your kidneys flush waste with less effort. Nutrition data shows it's low in both potassium and sodium, and that combination is exactly why renal dietitians frequently list it among kidney-friendly vegetables for people managing kidney conditions. You don't need much, 2 or 3 servings a week is plenty, whether that's a light vegetable soup, a quick stir-fry with cumin and turmeric, a simple raita if you tolerate dairy well, or blend it into a smoothie with a bit of mint and lime. Now here's an important safety note, and this one's worth paying close attention to. Bottle gourd occasionally turns bitter, and that bitterness is a warning sign, not just an unpleasant taste. It signals the presence of a compound called cucurbitacin, and published case reports, mostly from India, have documented serious liver and kidney toxicity in people who juiced bitter bottle gourd on an empty stomach and drank it raw. Symptoms in those documented cases included vomiting, stomach pain, and gastrointestinal bleeding, sometimes severe enough to require hospitalization. So the rule here is simple and non-negotiable. Always taste a small raw piece before you cook or juice a bottle gourd, and if there's any bitterness at all, throw the entire vegetable away. Don't try to cook the bitterness out because the toxin doesn't reliably break down with heat. Moving on to food number 2, red bell peppers. This is one of those cases where color really does matter. Green bell peppers are a different nutritional profile, and they don't offer the same benefits here. The National Kidney Foundation specifically lists red bell peppers among its top kidney-friendly foods, and the numbers back that up. A half-cup serving contains roughly 1 milligram of sodium and under 100 milligrams of potassium, which is remarkably low for a vegetable, alongside vitamin C, vitamin B6, folate, and an antioxidant called lycopene, the same compound that gives tomatoes and watermelon their red color. Lycopene and the other antioxidants in red bell peppers are believed to help protect kidney cells from oxidative stress, which is essentially wear and tear damage caused by unstable molecules in the bloodstream. You can eat red bell peppers raw in a salad, roast them until the skin blisters and blackens for a smoky flavor, scramble them into eggs in the morning, or blend them into a red pepper hummus for a snack. About a half cup most days of the week is a reasonable target, and if you want to round out your kidney-friendly vegetable rotation, the National Kidney Foundation's broader lists also include cabbage and cauliflower as solid low-potassium options worth exploring. Food number 3 is garlic, and this one has a genuinely interesting backstory. 2 of the biggest long-term threats to kidney health are high blood pressure and chronic inflammation, and garlic appears to work against both. When you chop, crush, or mince garlic and let it sit exposed to air for about 10 minutes before cooking it, an enzyme reaction produces a compound called allicin, and allicin is where most of garlic's studied benefits come from. Cooking it immediately after cutting, without that resting period, destroys much of the allicin before it can form. Multiple clinical studies have linked allicin to modest reductions in blood pressure, partly by helping blood vessels relax and improving nitric oxide availability, and to reduced markers of inflammation in the bloodstream. This isn't a brand new idea either. Traditional Ayurvedic medicine has used garlic for circulation support for literally thousands of years, and it's genuinely interesting when you see modern clinical research circling back to confirm pieces of that traditional use. The way to use it is simple: 1 to 2 cloves a day, finely chopped, left to sit for about 10 minutes, then stirred into a finished dish so the heat doesn't destroy too much of the allicin. And speaking of things that are good for you but that nobody particularly enjoys doing, if any of this is actually useful to you, hitting subscribe apparently keeps both your kidneys and this channel alive. If you're on blood thinning medication or you have a surgery scheduled, talk to your doctor before increasing your garlic intake, since it can increase bleeding risk in some people. And if you deal with acid reflux, take garlic with food rather than on an empty stomach, since raw garlic on an empty stomach is a fairly common trigger for heartburn. Food number 4 is the apple, and the old saying about an apple, a day isn't just a cute phrase here. There's real substance behind it for kidney health specifically. Apples contain a soluble fiber called pectin, and pectin works in your gut by binding to certain waste products and toxins, essentially escorting them out of your body before your kidneys ever have to deal with them, which reduces the overall filtering burden. Apples are also naturally lower in potassium than bananas, oranges, or grapes, which matters a lot for anyone managing kidney function, since potassium is one of the minerals that can build up dangerously when kidneys aren't filtering efficiently. And apples contain an antioxidant called quercetin, which multiple studies have linked to anti-inflammatory effects that may help protect kidney tissue over time. Here's a practical tip: eat the peel. Most of the pectin and most of the quercetin are concentrated in and just beneath the skin, so peeling your apple is quite literally throwing away a good chunk of the benefit. 1 medium apple a day is a reasonable, easy target, and if you're buying imported, heavily wax-coated apples that look almost artificially shiny and deep red, know that domestically grown, in-season varieties are generally the better nutritional choice, since heavy wax coatings can be harder to wash off completely. Food number 5 is dark berries, and depending on where you live and what's available to you, this can take a couple of different forms. The traditional pick here is jamun, also called Indian black plum, which has been used in Ayurvedic medicine for managing blood sugar for centuries, and modern research has continued to study its potential role in blood sugar regulation. But since jamun can be genuinely hard to find in most of the United States, blueberries and blackberries are excellent, widely available substitutes that offer a very similar benefit profile. What all of these dark, deeply colored fruits share is a group of plant pigments called anthocyanins, the same compounds responsible for that deep purple to almost black color. And multiple studies have linked anthocyanins to reduced oxidative stress and reduced inflammation, specifically in kidney cells. On top of that, these berries are naturally low in both potassium and sodium, which is part of why they consistently show up on kidney-friendly food lists worldwide. A handful a day is enough, whether that's fresh in season or frozen year-round, and frozen berries actually retain their antioxidant content quite well, so don't feel like fresh is required here. Before we move into habits, there's one more piece that ties all 5 of these foods together, and it's something most people get slightly wrong: hydration. You've probably heard the classic rule about drinking 8 glasses of water a day, but according to the National Kidney Foundation, there's actually no single number that applies to everyone. Your real fluid needs depend on your age, your activity level, your climate, and your overall health. And the most reliable everyday indicator is simply the color of your urine. Pale yellow generally means you're well hydrated, while consistently dark yellow is a sign to drink more. Staying properly hydrated helps your kidneys clear sodium, urea, and other waste products more efficiently, and some research has even suggested that good hydration over the long term may be associated with slower kidney function decline, though this is still an active area of study. That said, more isn't automatically better. Drinking extremely large amounts of water in a short window, which sometimes happens during intense endurance exercise, can dilute sodium levels in the blood to dangerous levels, a condition called hyponatremia. So the goal isn't to force down water you don't need, it's simply to drink consistently throughout the day and pay attention to thirst and urine color rather than chasing an arbitrary number. And one more quick myth worth clearing up while we're here. You may have heard that eating protein in general is automatically hard on the kidneys. For someone with healthy kidney function, research doesn't support that as a blanket rule. Normal, reasonable protein intake from foods like fish, eggs, beans, and lean meat isn't something healthy kidneys typically struggle with. The concern that gets exaggerated into that myth is specifically about people who already have reduced kidney function, where a nephrologist or renal dietitian may recommend moderating protein intake as part of a personalized plan. So this isn't a reason to fear protein in general, it's simply another example of why personalized medical guidance matters more than broad generalizations, especially once kidney function is already a known issue. Now let me share a quick story to illustrate why all of this actually matters in real life. This next part is a hypothetical, composite example based on patterns commonly described in published kidney health literature. It's not a specific real patient, and it's not anyone's personal medical history, just an illustration built from documented typical cases. Picture someone in their late 40s, we'll call him Mark for the sake of the story, who felt completely fine. No pain, no obvious symptoms, work was busy, and health wasn't really on his radar. He'd noticed his urine seemed a little foamy some mornings and occasionally had an unusually strong smell, but he chalked it up to dehydration or just not drinking enough water that day, and moved on with his life the way most people would. He also had mildly elevated blood pressure that he'd been managing with medication for a couple of years, and he occasionally took ibuprofen for lower back pain from his job, sometimes several days in a row during a bad stretch without thinking much of it. At a routine annual physical, his doctor ordered a basic urine test along with blood work that included creatinine and something called eGFR, which stands for estimated glomerular filtration rate, essentially a measure of how well the kidneys are filtering. The results showed early signs of reduced kidney function, still in an early, very manageable stage. Because it was caught early, Mark's doctor was able to adjust his blood pressure medication, advise him to switch away from regular ibuprofen use towards safer pain management options, and refer him to a renal dietitian to fine-tune his diet, including several of the exact foods we just talked about. A year later, follow-up testing showed his kidney function had stabilized. That's the entire point of a story like this. Kidney damage in its early stages is often silent, genuinely manageable, and frequently reversible or at least stoppable in its tracks, but only if it's caught in time, and the only reliable way to catch it in time is testing, not waiting for symptoms to show up. It's also worth pausing on why blood pressure and blood sugar keep coming up together in this conversation, because according to the CDC, diabetes and high blood pressure are the two leading causes of chronic kidney disease in the United States, responsible for the majority of new cases combined. Consistently high blood sugar gradually damages the tiny blood vessels inside the nephrons we talked about earlier, essentially wearing down the kidney's filtering equipment from the inside, while consistently high blood pressure forces those same delicate vessels to work under constant excess pressure, which has a similar wearing down effect over years. That's part of why several of the foods we covered today, low sodium, low potassium, antioxidant-rich choices like red bell peppers and berries, show up on both kidney-friendly and blood pressure-friendly food lists. The two goals overlap more than people realize. So with that in mind, let's talk about 3 everyday habits that quietly work against everything we just covered. Habit number 1, too much sodium. Chips, deli meats, canned soups, frozen dinners, and restaurant meals are consistently the biggest sources of hidden sodium in the average American diet, often far more than people realize, since a lot of it isn't from the salt shaker at all, but baked into processed and restaurant food before it ever reaches your plate. The World Health Organization recommends staying under about 5 grams of salt a day, which works out to roughly 1 level teaspoon total, and that includes salt that's already in your food, not just what you add yourself. Consistently exceeding that raises blood pressure over time, and high blood pressure is one of the 2 leading causes of kidney disease in the United States, right alongside diabetes. Habit number 2. Over-relying on over-the-counter painkillers, specifically NSAIDs like ibuprofen and naproxen. According to the FDA, more than 111 million people in the United States take these medications in a given year, and while occasional use for a headache or sore muscle is generally fine for most healthy people, research has consistently linked frequent, unsupervised, long-term NSAID use to reduced blood flow to the kidneys and a meaningfully increased risk of both acute kidney injury and chronic kidney disease progression. The risk climbs significantly for people who are older, already managing high blood pressure or diabetes, taking diuretics or certain blood pressure medications, or who are dehydrated, which is worth knowing if you're someone who takes ibuprofen regularly during intense exercise or hot weather. Doctors sometimes refer to the combination of NSAIDs, diuretics, and blood pressure medications together as the triple whammy, because that specific mix has been shown in nationwide studies to sharply raise the odds of sudden kidney injury. None of this means you need to avoid ibuprofen forever. It just means regular, repeated use deserves an actual conversation with your doctor rather than becoming a quiet daily habit. Habit number 3, unnecessary protein supplements. If your regular diet already covers your protein needs, which for most people it genuinely does, stacking on extra whey protein powder or mass gainer shakes on top of that just adds unnecessary filtering work for kidneys that don't need the extra load, since your body has to process and excrete the nitrogen byproducts from all that additional protein. This is especially worth thinking about if you're already dealing with any reduced kidney function, even mild and undiagnosed. Before adding any protein supplement to your routine, it's worth checking with a doctor or registered dietitian about whether you actually need it, and if you do use one, make sure it's from a reputable brand that's third-party tested, since supplement quality and purity vary enormously, and contamination has been a documented issue in parts of the industry. Beyond diet, there are a few other everyday lifestyle factors worth a quick mention because they show up again and again in kidney research and they're easy to overlook. Smoking is one of them. According to the National Kidney Foundation, the chemicals in tobacco smoke damage the lining of blood vessels throughout the body, including the ones feeding the kidneys, causing them to stiffen and narrow over time, which reduces how much oxygen and nutrient-rich blood actually reaches kidney tissue. On top of that, smoking raises blood pressure and heart rate, adding constant extra strain on kidneys that are already one of the most pressure-sensitive organs in the body. And research has linked smoking not just to a higher risk of chronic kidney disease, but to a higher risk of kidney cancer as well. The encouraging part is that quitting smoking is consistently associated with improved kidney health outcomes, even for people who've smoked for years, so it's never framed in the research as too late to matter. Alcohol is the second one, and the relationship here is really about dose. According to the National Kidney Foundation, regular heavy drinking can roughly double a person's risk of developing chronic kidney disease, and that risk climbs even further in people who also smoke. Part of the mechanism is straightforward. Alcohol increases urination, and if those lost fluids aren't replaced, it leads to dehydration, which, as we talked about earlier, forces kidneys to work harder with less blood flow to work with. Heavy drinking over years can also damage the liver, and a struggling liver indirectly makes the kidney's job harder too, since the two organs share some overlapping detox responsibilities. To be clear, this isn't a call to eliminate alcohol entirely. The CDC's general guidance for adults who choose to drink is to keep it to 2 drinks or fewer per day for men, and 1 drink or fewer per day for women, and staying within that range hasn't been shown to carry the same elevated risk as regular heavy drinking. The third factor is exercise, and this one's a genuinely positive note to end on. Regular physical activity helps manage body weight, lowers blood pressure, and improves cardiovascular health, all of which take direct pressure off kidney function over time. In fact, one study cited by the National Kidney Foundation found that people with advanced kidney disease who exercised regularly had roughly a 50% lower risk of death compared to those who didn't, which is a striking number for something as simple and accessible as regular movement. You don't need an intense training program for this to matter. Consistent, moderate activity, most days of the week, appears to be what drives the benefit, not extreme workouts. Put smoking, alcohol, and exercise together with the sodium, painkiller, and protein supplement habits we already covered, and what you end up with isn't a complicated list of rules. It's really just a handful of ordinary daily choices that, repeated for years, either protect this organ or slowly wear it down. Now let's circle back to something we touched on earlier, because it's genuinely the most important takeaway in this entire video. Research has linked several specific warning signs to early kidney issues, including foamy or unusually bubbly urine with a notably strong or unpleasant smell, swelling in the feet, ankles, or around the eyes, feeling unusually tired or foggy for no clear reason, and needing to urinate frequently at night when that wasn't previously normal for you. If any of that sounds even a little familiar, the next step is straightforward and inexpensive. Ask your doctor for a basic urine test, along with blood work for creatinine and eGFR. These are standard, widely available, relatively cheap tests, and for most people, they're covered as part of a routine annual physical, so there's rarely a good reason to put it off. For context on what those results actually mean, eGFR results are grouped into stages, and a result above 90 is generally considered normal, while anything below 60 for 3 months or longer is one of the markers doctors use to diagnose chronic kidney disease, with lower numbers indicating more advanced stages. The reason this test matters so much is that, unlike a lot of health metrics, eGFR can decline for years without producing any symptoms at all, which is exactly the pattern we saw in the story a moment ago. The only way Mark's doctor caught it was through routine testing, not because anything felt wrong. And if you or someone in your family already has a diagnosed kidney condition, whether that's chronic kidney disease, dialysis, or elevated creatinine levels, please don't treat this video as a one-size-fits-all plan. Nephrologists and renal dietitians tailor food choices, exact portion sizes, and timing to each individual's specific stage of kidney disease, current potassium and phosphorus levels, and lab results, and that kind of personalized guidance matters far more than any general list, including this one, ever could. So, to bring it all together, bottle gourd, red bell peppers, garlic, apples, and dark berries like blueberries or jamun, combined with cutting back on excess sodium, being genuinely mindful about regular NSAID use, and skipping unnecessary protein supplements, adds up to a solid, research-backed approach to supporting your kidneys for the decades ahead. None of this requires a dramatic overhaul of how you eat. Small, consistent choices, repeated over years, are what actually move the needle with an organ that works this quietly and this hard in the background. If this was useful, consider sharing it with someone in your life who could use it too, since kidney disease has a strong tendency to run in families, partly through genetics and partly through shared habits around food, salt, and medication use. Take care of yourself, get that routine blood work done if it's been a while, and we'll see you in the next one. One last practical note before we wrap up, since it ties directly back to the hydration point from earlier. Staying well hydrated hasn't just been linked to better kidney filtration. Research has also connected it to a lower risk of kidney stones, since concentrated urine gives minerals more opportunity to crystallize and clump together over time, while adequately diluted urine makes that far less likely. If you've ever had a kidney stone, or if they run in your family, that alone is often reason enough to make the urine color check we mentioned earlier into a daily habit rather than an occasional afterthought. And if you take away just one thing from this entire video, let it be this: none of what we covered today requires perfection. Nobody eats a perfectly kidney-friendly diet every single day. Nobody drinks the exact right amount of water every day, and that's not the bar here. The actual bar is simply doing slightly better than before, staying reasonably consistent over months and years rather than days, and not skipping that routine blood work just because nothing feels wrong right now. That combination, more than any single food on this list, is what genuinely protects an organ that spends every hour of every day quietly working on your behalf without ever asking for credit.